Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. For today's project we're going to have a bit of fun with some marbled geometric earrings. This uses hardly any clay, literally little scrap bits of leftover clays with a little bit extra for the underneath, and you can have fun creating all sorts of different patterns. This is the one I'm going to show you today, and on these ones I've used the darker colours towards the bottom and then graduated up towards the light, and on this one I used the darker at the top and then brought the lighter ones down to the bottom. So again, just think whatever you want to do. I've created my own template, I will show you that, but obviously just create your own designs. The main thing is to have straight lines cutting through the design and creating these little areas where we can add the different colours in. The first thing I did on just a piece of paper was I drew myself out a shape that I wanted the right size and the right shape for what I was planning to do, and then I drew some lines on it to create the patterns. I then copied that and printed out 2 sets on my printer and just labelled them up so that I've got a left and a right earring, and put 1, 2, 3, 4 in the little pieces, and we've got 2 sets because one we're going to keep the whole shape in and the other we're going to cut up and do our little shapes as the templates that we're going to use. So nice and simple, just create whatever pattern, whatever design you want to do, but as I mentioned earlier, nice straight lines, that's what we're doing for this one. The amount of clay we need for today's project is absolutely tiny. In fact, I won't even be using all of these amounts. So just use whatever you have, whatever you've got in your scrap box or your leftover pieces. Just choose a nice range of 6 colours for the pattern on the marbled effect on the front. You need a slightly larger amount to do as our backing sheet. That's going to be the back of the earrings. So for this one I've chosen the Brilliant Blue, and that's about 7 grams or about 1/4 ounce, and I've just put that through a medium setting of my pasta machine, and I'll be using the medium setting number 4 a few times when we do the pattern, and I'll put in the details below what that equates to in millimetres and card thicknesses. We're also going to use a colour just to do those cross lines, so I've chosen gold, and again it's just a small amount, probably about an 1/8 ounce or about 3.5 grams. So very small amounts, and all I've done is I've got it conditioned, and I've done that because it's such small amounts, just in my hands, just pushing it together, making it nice and soft. Other things I've got, I have a little sheet of paper that I'm just going to work on. This is just waxed paper, greaseproof, baking paper, parchment paper, anything like that will do. First thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to cut out and separate the sheets so that I've got a nice working area as I'm going. And then I'm also, with a cocktail stick, just going to very gently outline on both pieces, and also do a little mark where those lines cut through, so that when I'm placing my pieces I know roughly where they're going to go. So that's all we need, rough outline with those little marks, and I'll do the same with this one. So we're going to start with our 3 bottom colours. So we start with 3 and say we don't need very much. Something like that will be fine. I'm just going to press them slightly flatter with my fingers, and then we're just going to chop them into pieces. A polymer clay blade works amazingly for this. If you haven't got one of those, a craft knife will do. Just chop it into pieces, and if you've got neither of those, then you can just pull it into tiny pieces with your fingers. Use whichever method suits you. So, nice small pieces, muddle them all up, push them together in a flatter piece, and you want to be able to see that you've got a mix of all 3 colours. Then either with the cocktail stick, smush them around a bit, or if you've got one of these small ball tools, do it with that, and you're just messing them up a little bit more to give more of a sort of a marbly type feel to the surface. When you've done that a little bit, just give it a roll, see what you've got. If you've got bits where you've got large colours and you don't want that, you can always take off little bits and pull them into other colours. Do the swooshing effect again. And just do it until you're happy that you've got a nice sort of random look of colours. Once I've done that, you can either roll it between your playing cards to get it to that thickness of setting number 4, or because I've got a pasta machine, I will simply put it through the pasta machine on setting number 4. And we do that simply so that we have a nice even thickness when we start laying these onto our other pieces. So taking my 2 templates, where I've marked the 4 left and the 4 right, we're going to start at the bottom. So this is number 4. So simply cut along the lines, place your piece somewhere where you've got some of all 3 colours. So you can see why, as I said, we don't need very much clay at all for this. So I'll put that one, let's put him down about there. And then again, either with a blade or a craft knife, I'm just going to chop around the pieces. And then you can lift him up, and because we know roughly where that piece should go, because we've got our lines marked on the thing, we can just drop him into place and do the same for the second piece. And that is as complex as we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a fair amount of the leftover, you don't have to use all of it, and I'm going to take some of the next colour. This is the light blue, and I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to chop this into small pieces, re-chop this into small pieces, mix them together, give them that slight marbling. Then I'll work up to number 3 on my pieces, and again cut them out and put them on, and then add the next colour in for the piece number 2, and then the final piece in for piece number 1. So I'll fast forward through that because I'm literally doing the same thing as we've just done, but you will see the pieces as they start to go onto the background colours. These pieces will have become slightly out of shape as we transferred the clay. That's absolutely fine and not a problem. What we are going to do is we are going to use something like a long thin needle and create, by pressing down, little grooves where we're going to sit our line colour. And you can use the little marks you left on the bottom pieces earlier to give you the direction they need to go in. I'm going to take a small piece of gold and I'm going to put it through an extruder. Your extruder needs to be one that is specifically for use with polymer clay. I'm very lucky that I've got one of the Lucy Clay check extruders, but there are other makes available, so just use what you have. And if you have an extruder, then it's the smallest die round piece. That's what we're going to use to extrude some nice thin pieces of gold clay. And they'll come out of the extruder like that, say nice thin pieces. However, if you don't have an extruder, you can just take your gold clay and simply roll it by hand. You don't need very much for what we're doing. But obviously it's harder to be as exact and neat doing it by hand than it is through an extruder, but it is possible. Because all we're doing is very short lengths, so you just need a piece that's roughly going to equate to the size we're using, so I could keep going down and get it smaller still if I wanted. Whether you're using extruded clay or hand-rolled clay, just take your strips and just set them into the grooves that you've created. With your roller, just roll your pieces nice and flat. Don't press too hard because you don't want to change the shape too much. Place your two templates on top so that the lines marry up with the lines underneath, and then again, using your blade or a craft knife, just simply cut round the outside. I'm going to put a hole using this tiny little cutter, and again I'll put a link to where you can get things like this in the details below the video, but if you don't have this then just use a needle or a cocktail stick just to create a nice hole at the top. I've removed them from the paper, just added them to a couple of little small pieces of card, and then I will place them on a tile, tent the whole thing in aluminium foil to protect the clay should my oven spike during the baking process, and bake according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. So I'll bring you back when they are baked. Once they had cooled from the oven, I've just sanded them with wet dry sandpaper, and I used 240 grit, 600, 1000 and 1500. I will finish off to give them a nice high shine using an unstitched polishing mop on a bench grinder. I finished buffing those, so they've got a nice shine on them. Then all I'm going to do is finish off by using 2 large jump rings to go through the first bit, and then 2 oval rings before using the fishhook eye pins. And there are our pieces finished. Geometric marbled earrings. Very quick and simple technique in polymer clay. And just a couple of other colourways to show you. This is one I showed you at the start where I did the dark at the top rather than the dark at the bottom. And this was done with greens, a little bit of turquoise, then a bit of brilliant blue, and then finally a little bit of the dark Windsor blue in the top. And this set was a mix of rose and lilacs and raspberry with a bit of magenta, then a bit of the Indian red, and finally a bit of the purple or plum in the top of that one. So just tiny amounts, as you saw. Just have a bit of fun, marble them around and create your own geometric shapes. I hope you have fun with this one and make some of your own. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and as always a huge thank you to those of you who subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you next time when we have a bit more fun with our polymer clay creations.